My name is Clara. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of the night my blood decided I was the stain on their perfect holiday portrait. It started with a text message, a simple three-line text message that arrived on December 15th, exactly 2 weeks before New Year's Eve. My mother, Patricia, wrote, "Dinner at our place, December 31st, 7 p.m. Dress nicely, bring a dessert." To anyone else looking at that message, it would seem like a normal family invitation, warm even. But I knew my mother. I knew the language of the Harrison family better than anyone. When Patricia says, "dress nicely," she means, "don't embarrass us." When she says, "bring a dessert," she means, "prove you are useful." For the past 10 years, I had been playing a role, the quiet daughter, the accountant, the one who showed up, smiled politely, and then went home to cry in her car because no one actually saw her. But this year was different. This year, I had finally built something of my own. I didn't tell them. I never told them anything. Why would I? Every time I opened my mouth at a Harrison family dinner, my older brother, Stephen, would roll his eyes. My younger sister, Lisa, would find a way to twist my words into a joke. And my father, Richard, would just stare at his plate, chewing slowly, pretending he was deaf. But this year, I had a secret, a big one. I had been working for 8 years at a small investment firm in Midtown Manhattan. 8 years of getting coffee from men half as smart as me. 8 years of watching boys get promoted while I got performance reviews. But 6 months ago, I stopped being quiet. I stopped being the good little sister. I started playing the game. I took a risk. I saw a trend in renewable energy stocks that everyone else ignored. I moved money. Not illegally, I'm not stupid, but aggressively. I borrowed, I leveraged, I begged, and I prayed. And by December 15th, my portfolio was up 4,000%. 4,000%. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I had become the youngest self-made female partner in the history of my firm. My name was on a plaque in the lobby. Clara Harrison, partner. But did my family know? No, because they never asked. The last time my brother Stephen asked me about my job was Thanksgiving 3 years ago. He said, "Still crunching numbers for the old guys, Clara? You know, if you lost 10 pounds and smiled more, you could probably marry one of them." I laughed. I always laughed. But that night, I promised myself something. I promised myself that the next time Stephen opened his mouth to insult me, I would have a weapon so sharp, so undeniable, that he would choke on his own tongue. That weapon was the New York Stock Exchange. On December 20th, 5 days after my mother's text, I got a phone call from my firm's CEO, a man named Marcus Webb. Marcus was 64, bald, and had the emotional range of a rock, but he respected results. He said, "Clara, the board wants you to ring the closing bell on New Year's Eve. Your renewable energy play saved our fourth quarter. You earned it." I almost dropped the phone. Ringing the closing bell at the NYSE is not just an honor, it is the honor. It means you have arrived. It means the entire financial world stops for 15 seconds to watch you push a button. It means your face is on every major news network. It means you are untouchable. I accepted, of course. I hung up the phone and I cried. Not sad tears, angry tears, happy tears, relief. I immediately thought about my family. I imagined showing up to New Year's dinner with that secret tucked under my arm like a bomb. I imagined waiting for the right moment, the moment when Stephen would say something cruel, the moment when Lisa would whisper to her husband about how I was still single, the moment when my father would look at me with that empty disappointment, and then I would drop the bomb. But fate, as it always does, had a different plan, a crueler plan. On December 28th, 3 days before New Year's Eve, I received a second text from my mother. This one was longer. This one made my blood run cold. She wrote, Clara, my father and I have talked. We think it's best if you come to dinner after the toast this year, around 9 p.m. Your sister Lisa is bringing her new in-laws from Connecticut, and Stephen is bringing his business partner, a very important man named David. We just feel your energy can be a bit much for new people. We don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. You understand, don't you? I read that text 17 times. Your energy can be a bit much. I am an accountant. I wear beige sweaters. I speak in a soft voice. I have spent my entire adult life trying to be less so that my family could feel more. And now they were telling me to show up late, to hide in the kitchen, to eat cold turkey and congealed gravy after the important guests had left, because I made them uncomfortable. No. They were uncomfortable because I was a reminder of their mediocrity. Stephen was a real estate agent who hadn't sold a house in 4 months. Lisa was a stay-at-home mom who posted inspirational quotes on Instagram while secretly hating her life. And my parents? They were retired and bored, living off my grandfather's inheritance. I was the only one who had built something from nothing, and that made them deeply, profoundly uncomfortable. I didn't reply to the text. I let it sit there on my phone screen, glowing like an accusation. For 2 days, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling of my one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, thinking about revenge. Not petty revenge, not keying Stephen's BMW or posting embarrassing photos of Lisa. I wanted structural revenge. I wanted to dismantle their self-righteousness so completely that they would never feel comfortable in their own skin again. And then, on December 30th at 11:47 p.m., I had an idea. It was beautiful. It was cruel. It was perfect. I decided I would not show up late to their dinner. I would not show up at all. But they would see me. Everyone would see me, because on New Year's Eve at 4 p.m., I would be standing on the balcony of the New York Stock Exchange, ringing that bell while the entire world watched. And then I would let my phone ring, and ring, and ring. I turned off my read receipts, I silenced my notifications, and I waited. The morning of December 31st was gray and cold. New York City looked like a steel trap wrapped in frost. I woke up at 5 a.m., not because I was nervous, but because I had stopped feeling anything except a quiet, burning focus. I looked at my phone. 23 messages from my mother, 14 from Lisa, 6 from Stephen, 0 from my father. Typical. I didn't open any of them. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they said. They said, "Clara, where are you?" And "Clara, don't be dramatic." And "Clara, you're ruining the evening." Let me tell you something about families like mine. They are not evil in a cartoonish way. They don't twirl mustaches or tie you to train tracks. They are worse. They are the casually cruel. They're the kind of cruel that comes with a smile and a side dish of gaslighting. If I had shown up at 9 p.m. as instructed, my mother would have hugged me and whispered, "See, that wasn't so hard, was it?" She would have pretended that asking me to hide was an act of love, a favor, but I wasn't going to play that game anymore. I took a shower. I put on my armor. Not a dress. I don't do dresses for my family. I put on a navy blue pantsuit, Italian wool, hand-stitched. It cost more than my mother's dining room table. I put on my grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones my mother said I didn't deserve because I wasn't settled. I looked in the mirror. For the first time in 32 years, I saw someone dangerous. I arrived at the New York Stock Exchange at 2 p.m. The building at 11 Wall Street is not just a building, it is a cathedral of capitalism. The columns are massive, the flags snap in the wind like gunshots, and inside it is chaos. Screens everywhere, men in suits shouting into phones, the smell of coffee, fear, and ambition. Marcus Webb met me in the lobby. He shook my hand firmly, looked me in the eye, and said, "You ready, kid?" I said, "I was born ready, Marcus. I just forgot for a few decades." He laughed. He didn't know I was telling the truth. The next 2 hours were a blur of rehearsals, photographers, and lawyers whispering in my ear about what I could and could not say to the press. I signed forms. I shook hands with traders who looked at me like I was a unicorn, a woman in finance who actually knew what she was doing. And then, at 3:30 p.m., my phone started vibrating in my pocket. I pulled it out, just to see. "Mother, Clara Harrison, you call me right now. Your father is furious. Steven's business partner is here, and we had to explain why one of our children is too unstable to attend dinner." My thumb hovered over the screen. I wanted to type back, "Unstable? I'm about to ring the bell of the most powerful financial institution in the world. What are you doing, Mother? Eating Lisa's dry turkey and pretending Steven isn't a failure?" But I didn't. I turned the phone off completely. I handed it to my assistant, a sweet young woman named Jenna, and said, "If anyone calls, tell them I'm unavailable. If my mother calls, tell her I'm dead." Jenna blinked. "Dead?" "Metaphorically," I said. "The old Clara is dead. The new one is about to ring a bell." At 3:45 p.m., I was led to the balcony. The balcony overlooks the trading floor, and let me tell you, seeing the NYSE trading floor from above is like looking at a human ant farm. Thousands of people, screaming, waving, buying, selling, desperation and greed mixed together in a beautiful, ugly symphony. I stood at the podium. The bell was gold, or gold plating. I didn't care. It was mine for 1 second. A producer from CNBC counted down. 3, 2, 1. I pressed the button. Bing, 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 bing. The sound echoed through the entire building. The traders cheered. Cameras flashed. For 15 seconds, the entire financial world paused because of me. I didn't smile. I just looked into the nearest camera, and I thought of my mother's dining room. I thought of the empty chair at the end of the table where I usually sat. The chair that wobbled. The chair that no one wanted. That chair was gone now. When the bell stopped ringing, the trading floor erupted in applause. Marcus Webb hugged me. A reporter shoved a microphone in my face and said, "Clara Harrison, how does it feel to be the youngest woman to ring the closing bell this year?" I looked at the camera. I thought about my family watching. They weren't watching, of course. They were too busy pretending I didn't exist. But they would find out. Oh, they would find out. I said, "It feels like coming home, but only to the home I built myself." That quote would end up on Bloomberg, on Yahoo Finance, on the evening news, but I didn't know that yet. I walked off the balcony, my heels clicking on the marble floor like gunshots. Jenna handed me my phone. It was glowing red with notifications. 104 messages. I didn't read them. I got into a town car, a black Lincoln driven by a man named Dimitri who didn't ask questions, and I went back to my apartment. I ordered sushi. I poured a glass of champagne, and I waited, because I knew what was coming. At exactly 8:45 p.m., my mother called again. This time I answered. "Clara!" she screamed. Not hello, not are you okay? Just my name like a curse. "Hi, Mom," I said, calm as still water. "Happy New Year." "Where are you? We waited. Lisa's in-laws asked about you. Steven's partner asked about you. I had to lie, Clara. I had to say you were sick. And then someone showed us a video on their phone of you ringing a bell on the news." I took a sip of champagne. "That wasn't just any bell, Mom. That was the closing bell of the New York Stock Exchange. I'm a partner at my firm now. I control over $40 million in assets. But please, tell me more about how I make people uncomfortable." Silence. Long, horrible, beautiful silence. Then my father's voice came on the line. My father who never spoke to me on the phone. My father who had ignored me for years. "Clara," he said, his voice rough, "you should have told us. You should have asked." And I hung up. Let me paint you a picture of what was happening at my parents' house while I was eating spicy tuna rolls and watching the ball drop in my pajamas. I know what happened because Lisa's husband, a weak-chinned man named Greg who secretly liked me more than he liked Lisa, sent me a play-by-play via text. He wrote a novel. I'll summarize it for you. At 6 p.m., the guests arrived. Lisa's in-laws, the Whitmores, were a boring couple from Greenwich who talked about their boat too much. Stephen's business partner, David, was a slick-haired weasel who had Googled the Harrison family and found nothing impressive. My mother had set the table with the good china, the silver that only came out for Easter and funerals. There were name cards, handwritten, and at the very end of the table, tucked between a candle and a salt shaker, was a card that said Clara, but the chair was empty. At 7 p.m., my mother made a toast. She said, "To family, to those who are here and to those who couldn't make it." She glanced at the empty chair. Lisa giggled nervously. Stephen rolled his eyes. At 8 p.m., David, the business partner, asked where the missing daughter was. Stephen said, "Oh, Clara? She's our weird little sister. She's an accountant, very boring. She probably stayed home to count her pennies." Everyone laughed. At 8 p.m., Greg, bless his traitorous heart, excused himself to the bathroom. But he didn't go to the bathroom. He went to the living room and turned on the TV. He was looking for football scores. Instead, he found the local news. And there I was, standing on the NYSE balcony in my navy blue pantsuit, ringing the bell. Greg ran back to the dining room. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, pale, holding his phone. Then he said, has anyone seen the news tonight?" My mother said, "We don't watch news on New Year's. It's depressing." Greg said, "You might want to see this." They all went to the living room. The segment was already replaying. The anchor said, "In a historic moment today, 32-year-old Clara Harrison became the youngest woman to ring the closing bell at the NYSE, capping off a record-breaking year for her firm." And there I was, smiling, confident, untouchable. My mother screamed, not a happy scream, a scream of pure, unadulterated rage, because she realized, in that moment, that I had not been sick, I had not been hiding, I had chosen the NYSE over her dining room, and worse, infinitely worse, I had done it publicly. Stephen punched a wall. He actually punched a wall, broke a knuckle. Lisa started crying because she said I was showing off. My father just stared at the screen, and for the first time in his life, he looked proud, not of me, but of the spectacle. He always loved a winner. The Whitmores, the in-laws, were confused. They asked, "Wait, your daughter is a Wall Street partner? Why didn't you tell us?" There was no good answer to that question. David, Stephen's business partner, pulled Stephen aside and said, "Your sister controls $40 million, and you're asking me to invest in your failing real estate company? Stephen, why would I give you money when I could give it to her?" Stephen's business deal collapsed on the spot. And then, at 8:45 p.m., my mother called me, and I hung up on her. That was the moment the Harrison family broke. Not because of me, because of the truth. The truth that I had always been the strongest one, the smartest one, and they had spent decades trying to shrink me so they wouldn't have to look at their own smallness. The first week of January was a feeding frenzy. My phone didn't stop ringing. Not because my family loved me now, but because they needed me. Stephen needed money, Lisa needed a job, her husband Greg had been laid off and she had been hiding it. My mother needed a new roof on her house. My father needed, a new ego. They didn't call to apologize, they called to make requests. Stephen left a voicemail that said, "Clara, look, I know we've had our differences, but you're rich now. You can afford to help your big brother out. Just a small loan, $50,000. It's nothing to you." $50,000. Nothing to me. He said it like I owed him. Lisa texted, "Can you get me a job at your firm? I'm good with people. You're good with numbers. We'd be unstoppable." She had never worked a day in her life. My mother wrote a letter, an actual paper letter mailed to my apartment. It said, Clara, we are still your parents. You have a duty to honor us. We raised you. We fed you. The least you can do is pay for the new roof. It's leaking." I read that letter 3 times. Then I burned it in my kitchen sink. But the most interesting response came from my father. He didn't call, he didn't text, he showed up at my office, unannounced. It was January 4th. I was in a meeting with 3 hedge fund managers when my assistant buzzed me and said, "Your father is in the lobby. He says it's an emergency." I excused myself, I walked to the lobby, and there he was, Richard Harrison, 61 years old, retired, wearing a puffer jacket and boots with salt stains. He looked small, smaller than I remembered. He said, "Clara, I need to talk to you." I crossed my arms. Talk. He looked at the floor, then at the ceiling, then at me. "I know I wasn't present when you were growing up. I know I let your mother handle things, and I know she has a sharp tongue. She has a knife, Dad, not a tongue." He nodded. "Okay, but I'm here now, and I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. I just didn't know how to say it." I waited for the but. It came. "But your mother is sick. Not physically, but she's not handling this well. The neighbors are talking. The Whitmores are telling everyone that we didn't know about your success. It's embarrassing for her. So I'm asking you, come to dinner, just once, apologize for missing New Year's, and we can all move on." Apologize for missing a dinner I was uninvited from? To make my mother feel better about her own cruelty? I looked at my father, this man who had watched my mother tear me down for 32 years and said nothing. This man who had sat at the head of the table while I was made the family joke, and I felt something I had never felt before. Pity. "Dad," I said softly, "I'm not going to apologize for my success, and I'm not going to pretend that your silence over the years was neutrality. It was cowardice. You chose her every single time, and that's fine. That was your choice. But now I'm making mine." I turned around and walked back to my meeting. I didn't look back, but I heard him say, "Clara, please." I kept walking. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to cut my family off completely. That would be too easy, too clean, and frankly, too merciful. I wanted them to live with what they had done. I wanted them to see my face on billboards, on news segments, on LinkedIn posts. I wanted them to know that the daughter they tried to hide was now impossible to ignore. So I made a plan. I would not give them money, not a single penny, but I would give them something worse. I would give them proximity. I would invite them to my world, the world Bay didn't understand, the world of billion-dollar deals, black tie galas, and people who spoke a language they couldn't learn. I would invite them to watch me succeed, up close, without a mask, and I would watch them squirm. On January 10th, I sent an email to my entire family. Not a text, an email. Formal, cold, professional. Subject, an invitation. Body, dear family. In light of recent events, I have decided to host a small gathering at my apartment on January 31st at 7 p.m. This is not a holiday dinner. This is not a reconciliation. This is an opportunity for you to see my life, the life I built without your help, your encouragement, or your respect. You will come. You will be polite, and you will listen. If you cannot commit to these terms, do not come. There will be no hard feelings, only the quiet acknowledgement that you were never really family to begin with. RSVP by January 20th. Regards, Clara Harrison. I attached a photo, not of me, of my apartment, the view from my 48th floor living room, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, a piano, a fireplace, a dining table that seated 12. I knew what they would see. They would see money, They would see power. They would see everything they had told me I could never have. Within an hour, the responses came. Stephen, I'll be there, don't worry, I'll behave. Translation, I want money. Lisa, can Greg come? Translation, I need a babysitter for my insecurities. My mother, we will attend, but Clara, this is not a competition. Translation, it is absolutely a competition and I am losing. My father, okay. One word, okay. My father had finally run out of excuses. The next 20 days were the calmest of my life. I worked, I exercised, I meditated, I prepared. I hired a private chef for the dinner, a woman named Sophia who had cooked for the mayor. I hired a security guard to stand outside my door, not because I was afraid of my family, but because I wanted them to see the guard and feel small. I planned every detail, the music, the lighting, the seating arrangement. I sat my mother at my left hand, my father at my right, Stephen across from me, Lisa next to Stephen, and at the end of the table, facing me, an empty chair. A reminder, the chair they had tried to put me in. Now it was theirs. On January 31st, at exactly 6:59 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the door. My mother was wearing a dress from 2012. My father had a fresh haircut. Stephen was sweating through his shirt. Lisa was looking at my marble floors like she wanted to lick them. They stepped inside, and for a full 10 seconds, no one spoke. Then my mother said, "It's big." "It's mine," I said. "Come in. Dinner is at 7. I led them to the living room. The skyline was on fire with sunset, orange and pink and gold, the kind of view you can't buy, the kind of view you have to earn. Stephen walked to the window. He pressed his forehead against the glass like a child at an aquarium. "How much does this cost, Clara?" "More than your self-respect. But don't worry, I'm not lending you any." He flinched. Good. Dinner was served at exactly 7 p.m. Sophia brought out the first course, a lobster bisque that cost more per bowl than Lisa's weekly grocery budget. We ate in near silence. The only sounds were spoons against porcelain and the distant hum of the city below. Halfway through the second course, a wild mushroom risotto, my mother finally cracked. "Clara," she said, putting down her fork, "what do you want from us?" I chewed slowly, swallowed, dabbed my mouth with a napkin. "I want you to admit it," I said. "Admit what?" "That you were wrong, that you spent 32 years trying to convince me I was less than because you couldn't handle the fact that I was more. I want you to say it out loud. All of you." The table went cold. Stephen looked at his plate. Lisa looked at Greg. My father looked at the window. My mother looked at me like I had just slapped her. "We were not wrong," my mother said. "We were protecting you. The world is cruel, Clara. We taught you to be humble." "You taught me to be invisible," I said. "There's a difference." I stood up. I walked to the window. I turned my back on them, a gesture I had learned from them. "You wanted me to come late to your New Year's dinner. You wanted me to hide in the kitchen so your guests wouldn't see me. Do you understand how broken that is? You didn't want your own daughter at your table because you were ashamed of her." My mother started to speak. I held up my hand. "I'm not finished." I rang the NYSE bell instead. And do you know what happened? The entire world celebrated me. Strangers celebrated me. People who don't know my name celebrated me because they saw a woman who refused to be hidden. I turned around. "So here is my offer. You can stay for dessert. You can eat my chef's chocolate souffle. You can look at my view, and then you can go home and think about what you've done. Or you can leave now. But either way, you will never, ever ask me to make myself small again." Silence. And then my father stood up. He walked toward me, slowly, like a man approaching a wild animal. He stopped 3 feet away. He looked at me, really looked at me, not through me, at me. "You're right," he said. My mother gasped. Stephen dropped his fork. Lisa's mouth fell open. "Richard!" my mother shouted. "No, Patricia," my father said. "She's right. I've been quiet for too long. I watched you tear her down. I watched you favor Stephen. I watched you mock her for being single, for being quiet, for being an accountant, and I said nothing, because it was easier." He looked at me. "I am sorry, Clara. I am deeply, truly sorry." I didn't cry. I had promised myself I wouldn't cry, but my throat closed up. "Thank you," I whispered. "That's all I wanted. Not money, not apologies from everyone, just one person to see me." My mother stood up. Her face was red. Her hands were shaking. "You are destroying this family," she said to me. "No, Mother," I said. "I'm just refusing to be destroyed by it." She grabbed her purse. She grabbed my father's arm. "We're leaving." My father looked at me, then at her, then back at me. For the first time in his life, he didn't follow her. "No," he said, "I'm staying." My mother walked out. Stephen followed her. Lisa hesitated, then followed Stephen. Greg, the trader, gave me a small thumbs up and left with them. The door closed. And it was just me and my father. He sat back down at the table, he picked up his fork, he took a bite of risotto. "This is good," he said. "It is," I said. We ate in silence, but it wasn't the cold silence of the past. It was the warm silence of two people who had finally stopped pretending. Section 6. The Moral. What I learned. It has been 6 months since that dinner. My mother still doesn't speak to me. Stephen sends me passive-aggressive emails every few weeks. Lisa unfriended me on Facebook, then refriended me, then unfriended me again. They are chaotic. They are angry. They are exactly who they have always been. But I am different. I learned something that night, something I want you to hear, whoever you are, wherever you are. If you have ever been made to feel too loud, too quiet, too much, or not enough, your family does not get to define your worth. They can be wrong about you. They can be cruel to you. They can try to shrink you until you fit into their narrow, jealous, fearful version of the world, but they do not get to decide who you are. The only person who decides that is you. When my family said I would make people uncomfortable at New Year's, they were telling the truth, but not for the reason they thought. I make people uncomfortable because I am successful, because I am relentless, because I refuse to stay in the chair they gave me. And that discomfort, that's not my problem. That's their invitation to grow. If you are watching this and you are the quiet one at the table, the one who gets the pitying looks and the backhanded compliments, hear me. Ring your own bell, whatever that bell looks like. A promotion, a degree, a painting, a business, a new city, a door closing, a door opening. Ring it loud, ring it proud, and let them stare. Because the best revenge is not cruelty, it is not destruction, it is visibility. It is living so fully, so brightly, that the people who tried to hide you have to shield their eyes. My name is Clara Harrison. I am 32 years old. I ring bells now, and I have never been more comfortable in my entire life.